Hey everybody, for this installment we are skipping chapter 172 and going straight to 173. You'll remember at the end of chapter 171, Mr. Greenwood went with the Marquis with a reputation to the Marquis's house. And in chapter 172 we got a relatively detailed look at the reason the Marquis has a reputation for debauchery. And I didn't feel like reading all of that out loud. By the end of it, Mr. Greenwood had found companionship with someone. I don't know if that person will play a role in anything, but we're moving ahead. So, chapter 173, The Adieu. Our narrative must now take a leap of several months. It was the middle of October. Once more in the vicinity of Count Alteroni's mansion near Richmond, a handsome young man and a beautiful dark-eyed maiden were walking together. Need we say that they were Richard and the charming Isabella? The countenances of both wore an expression of melancholy, but that indication of feeling was commingled with the traces of other emotions. Richard's eyes beamed with ardor, and his lips denoted stern resolution. Isabella's bewitching features showed that her generous soul entertained warm and profound hope, even though the clouds sat upon her brow. "Yes, my adored one," said Richard, gazing tenderly upon her, "it is decided. Tomorrow I embark on this expedition. But I could not quit England without seeing you once more, dearest Isabella, and for 2 or 3 days have I vainly wandered in this neighborhood with the hope of meeting you alone." "Oh, Richard, had I for one moment divined that you were so near, I should have come to you," answered the princess. "And this you know well. If I have hitherto discouraged clandestine meetings and secret correspondence, save on 1 or 2 occasions, it was simply because you should not have reason to think lightly of me. But you are well aware, Richard, that my heart is thine, unchangeably thine, and that my happiest moments are those I pass with thee. I cannot chide you, dearest, for that fine feeling which has made you discourage clandestine meetings and secret correspondence," said Richard, gazing with mingled admiration and rapture upon the angelic countenance of Isabella. "But now that circumstances are about to change, now that I shall be far away from thee, beloved girl, that restriction must in some degree be removed, and you will permit me to write to you from time to time. It would be an absurd affectation and a ridiculous prudery were I to refuse you," replied Isabella. "Yes, dear Richard, write to me, and write often," she added, tears starting in her eyes. "A thousand thanks, Isabella, for this kind permission, this proof of your love. And oh, to whatever perils I am about to oppose myself face to face, in whatever dangers I may be involved, whatever miseries or privations I may be destined to endure, the thought of you, my own adored Isabella, will make all seem light. But I do not anticipate much difficulty in the attainment of our grand object. General Grachia, Colonel Morosino, and the other chiefs of this enterprise have so well, so prudently, so cautiously digested all the measures necessary to ensure success that failure is scarcely possible. The tyranny of the Grand Duke and of his shameless ministry has reduced the Castelcicalans to despair. We have 3 fine vessels, and 1,200 devoted patriots will form the expedition. The moment we land, we shall be welcomed with enthusiasm." Why do I have a feeling that is not what's going to happen? Just a thought. "And if an opportunity should serve for me to show myself worthy of the confidence of that General Grachia and his colleagues have placed in me, if," continued Richard, his handsome countenance now lighted up with a glow of heroic enthusiasm, "if the aid of my feeble efforts can in any way demonstrate my zeal in favor of the constitutional cause, be well assured, dearest Isabella, that it is not an idle boaster nor a braggart coward who now assures thee that he will not dishonor the service in which he has embarked." "Of that I feel convinced, Richard," exclaimed the Italian lady, whose soul caught the enthusiasm which animated her lover. "But you know not the wild hopes, the exalted visions which have at times filled my imagination, since I heard a few weeks ago that you were one of the chiefs of this enterprise, the preparations for which were communicated to my father. For you are doubtless aware that General Grachia has made my father acquainted with his intentions and projects, which the prince discountenances," added Richard with a sigh. "Nevertheless, he is perhaps right. But if we succeed, Isabella, oh, if we succeed, your father becomes the sovereign of a great and enlightened people. Then what hope will remain for me?" Providence will not desert us, Richard, answered Isabella. Said I not ere now that the wildest hopes, the most exalted visions have dazzled my imagination? I will not describe them to you, Richard, but need I confess that they are connected with yourself? The dying words of our poor friend Marianne have made an impression upon me which I can never forget. I can well divine all the hopes and aspirations which her prophetic language was calculated to excite, returned Markham, for there have been moments when I was weak enough to yield to the same influence myself. But the future is with the Almighty, and he must ordain our happiness or our misery. I must now leave you, my beloved Isabella. When I am away, thou wilt think of me often? Oh, Richard, will you really depart? Will you venture on this expedition so fraught with danger? Cried Isabella, now giving way to her grief as the moment of separation drew nigh. I told you to hope. I wished to console you, but it is I who require consolation when about to say farewell to you. Oh, Richard, if you knew what anguish now fills my heart, you would be enabled to estimate all my love for you. I do, adored Isabella, said Richard, pressing her to his breast. How devotedly, how faithfully you have loved me, I can never forget. When spurned from your father's house, overwhelmed with the most cruel suspicions, your love remained unchanged, and in many a bitter, bitter hour have I derived sweet solace from the conviction that thy heart was mine. O Isabella, God in his mercy grant that I may return from this enterprise with some honor to myself. It is not that I am influenced by motives of selfish ambition. It is that I may remove at least one of the 100 obstacles which oppose our union. And now, adieu, my angel, my dearly beloved Isabella, adieu, adieu. Farewell, Richard, farewell, dearest one, my first and only love, murmured Isabella as she wept bitterly upon his breast. Then they embraced each other with that passionate ardor, with that lingering unwillingness to separate, with that profound dread to tear themselves asunder, which lovers in the moment of parting alone can know. Let us be firm, Isabella, said Richard. Who can tell what happiness my share in this enterprise may create for us? Yes, something tells me that it will be so, answered Isabella. And that hope sustains me. Another embrace, and they parted. Yes, they parted, that handsome young man and that charming Italian maiden, and soon they waved their handkerchiefs for the last time. Then, in a few moments, they were lost to each other's view. Richard returned home to his house at Lower Holloway. He had visited the farm near Hounslow a few days previously and had taken leave of Catherine. The young maiden had wept when her benefactor communicated to her his intended absence from England from some time, but as he did not acquaint her with the nature of the business which took him away from his native country, she was not aware of the perils he was about to encounter. He had now to say farewell to the inmates of his own dwelling, but towards Mr. Monroe, Ellen, and the faithful Whittingham he was less reserved than he had been to Catherine. Vainly had the old butler implored Master Richard not to indemnify himself with other people's business. Vainly had Mr. Monroe endeavored to persuade him to refrain from risking his life in the political dissensions of a foreign country, and vainly had the beautiful and generous-hearted Ellen, with a sisterly warmth, argued on the same side. Richard was determined. They deemed him obstinate, foolish, almost mad, but they knew not of his love for Isabella. I must now make you acquainted with a certain portion of my affairs, said our hero, addressing Mr. Monroe, in order that you may manage them for me until my return. I have embarked as much of my capital as I could well spare in the enterprise on which I am about to set out. You will find in my strong-box, of which I leave you the key, a sufficient sum of money to answer the expenses of the establishment until January. Should I not return by that time, you will find papers in the same place which will instruct you relative to the moneys that will then be due to me from the 2 respectable individuals who are my tenants. Moreover, added Richard, and here his voice faltered, my will is in the strong-box, and should I perish in this undertaking, you will find, my dear friend, and you too, my faithful Whittingham, that I have not left you without resources. Richard, this is too generous, exclaimed Mr. Monroe, tears of gratitude trickling down his cheeks. Whittingham also wept, and Ellen's sobs were convulsive, for she regarded Richard in the light of a dear brother. Render not our parting moments more painful than they naturally are, my dear friend, said Markham. You cannot understand, but if I live, you shall some day know the motives which influence me in joining this expedition. Mr. Monroe, Ellen, Whittingham, I have one last request to make. You are all aware that on the 10th of July, 1843, a solemn appointment exists between my brother and myself. If I should perish in a far-off clime, or if a prison or any accident prevent my return, let one of you represent me on that occasion. Should it be so, tell my brother how much I have loved him, how anxiously I have ever looked forward to that day, how sincerely I have prayed for his welfare and his success. Tell him, continued Richard, while the tears rolled down his cheeks large and fast, tell him that I have cherished his memory as no brother ever before was known to do, and if he be poor or unhappy or suffering or unfortunate, receive him into this house, which will then be your own. Console, comfort him. If he be criminal, do not spurn him. Remember, he is my brother. Ellen sobbed as if her heart would break as Richard uttered these words. There was something fearfully poignant and convulsive in that young lady's grief. I have theories about that. But suddenly rousing herself, she rushed from the room, and returning in a few moments with her child, she presented it to Markham, saying, "Embrace him, Richard, before you depart. Embrace him, for he bears your name." Our hero received the innocent infant in his arms and kissed Richard tenderly. No pen can depict the expression of pleasure, of radiant joy, joy shining out from amidst her tears, with which Ellen contemplated that proof of affection towards her child. "Thank you, Richard, thank you, my brother," she exclaimed as she received back her child. The old butler and Mr. Monroe were not callous to the touching nature of that scene. "I have now no more to say," observed Richard. "I am about to retire to the library for a short time. At 5 o'clock the post-chaise will be here. Whittingham, my faithful friend, you will see that all my necessaries will be carefully packed." Markham then withdrew to his study. There he wrote a few letters upon matters of business. At length Whittingham made his appearance. "More cars arrived, Master Richard," said the old man, "and it is close upon 5. "I shall soon be ready, Whittingham," answered Richard. The old butler withdrew. Then Richard took from his strong-box the mysterious packet which had been left to him by Thomas Armstrong, and that sacred trust he secured about his person. "Oh, I'd forgotten about that. We still haven't figured out what's in that envelope package thing that was given to him. Now," he said, "I'm about to quit the home of my forefathers." And tears trickled down his cheeks. "This is foolish," he exclaimed after a pause. "I must not yield to my emotions, when on the eve of such a grand and glorious undertaking." He then returned to the drawing-room. At that moment the post-chaise arrived at the front door of the mansion. We will not detail the affecting nature of the farewell scene. Suffice it to say that Richard departed with the fervent prayers and the sincerest wishes of those whom he left behind. Morcar accompanied him. "Which road, sir?" asked the postilion. "Canterbury Deal," replied Richard, and the post-chaise whirled him away from the home of his forefathers. By a special messenger on the same day when the above-mentioned incidents took place, the following letter was dispatched from London. To Her Serene Highness the Grand Duchess of Castelcicala. I have the honor to inform your Serene Highness that the measures which I adopted, and which your Highness condemned in the last letter your Highness deigned to address to me, have enabled me to ascertain the intentions of the conspirators. The 3 vessels purchased by them are now completely equipped and manned. One has already arrived in the Downs, where the chiefs of the rebels are to join her. A second sailed from Hull 4 days ago, and the third left Waterford about the same time. They will all 3 meet at Cadiz, where they are to take in stores and water. 1,200 exiled Castelcicalans are on board these 3 ships, which are ostensibly fitted out as immigrant vessels for North America. So well have General Grachia, Colonel Morosino, and Mr. Markham planned their schemes that I question whether even the English government is acquainted with the real destination of those ships and the object of their cruise. So someone is telling Eliza what's happening. So that means probably the Grand Duke's going to be ready when they arrive. Oh! Beware then, noble lady. The last meeting of the chiefs of the expedition was held last evening, and I was present in my presumed capacity of a stanch adherent to the cause of the conspirators. The reasons which I adduced for not proceeding with them on the enterprise and for remaining in London were completely satisfactory, and no one for a moment suspected my integrity. Indeed, the confidence which Mr. Markham has placed in me from the beginning, in consequence of the share which I had in saving his life, an incident to which I have alluded in preceding letters to your Highness, on a certain occasion, annihilated all suspicions as to the sincerity of my motives. At the meeting of which I have just spoken, it was resolved that the descent upon Castelcicala shall be made in the neighborhood of Ossore, which, I need scarcely inform your Serene Highness, is a small seaport about 35 miles to the south of Montoni. And now I have discharged what I consider to be a faithful duty. If I have fallen in your Highness's good opinion by betraying those with whom I affected to act, I fondly hope that the importance of the information which I have thereby been enabled to give you will restore me to your Highness's favor. But remember, my dear lady, remember the prayer which I offered up to your Highness when first I wrote concerning this conspiracy. Remember the earnest supplication which I then made and now renew, that not a hair of Richard Markham's head must be injured. I have the honor to subscribe myself your Serene Highness's most faithful and devoted servant, Filippo Dorosini, October 16, 1843. 1840. My brain was thinking, 1843 is when Richard and his brother are supposed to meet. 1840. We've still got like almost 3 years. Thus was it that Mr. Greenwood's valet provided to the utmost of his power for the safety of Richard Markham, in case those whom he improperly denominated conspirators should fall into the hands of the Castelcicalan authorities. Okay, so a warning has been sent ahead that these guys are coming, which cannot be good for their plans. But Filippo was like, you guys got to watch out for Richard. He needs to be kept safe. Whether or not that will prove sufficient, I don't know. Okay, we'll see what happens with Richard in the next chapter.